Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are talking about that we left America and why. I have my guest Candice with me today. Hey, Candice.
Hey, how are you?
Good. So Christine is going to jump in. Hopefully, she'll jump in a little bit later. For those of you who are on the Portugal, Europe time, we're having like really, really bad storms here, and the electricity and internet went out where she's located. So when she jumps on, we will bring her on. But right now, it's going to be Candice and I talking. So you met Candice last week, where we both kind of talked about what you need to know before moving abroad. But today, we want to get more of the stories and updates for people who have been living abroad for some time now. So, any questions that you have that may pop in your head as what we wish you would have known, we're going to answer some of those questions. But in addition, if you have anything, let us know. So, the first one, Candice, the first question is where are you from and why did you leave America?
Okay, I am from Cleveland, Ohio, born and raised, East Side. Had to throw that out there. An honorary Floridian. And I left the United States for a variety of reasons. One of the main reasons was just to experience peace and joy, really a more easy life that's centered around social activities. I was feeling very lonely in the States and just everything was centered on work, work, work. I don't think I mentioned this in the last show, but one of the other reasons that I moved was to expand my dating options because dating in
Okay.
America, quite frankly, as a Black woman in America, can sometimes feel daunting. And whenever I would go overseas, it would be like, wow, I feel like I had way more options. I was dating men that I felt like were in uh, my range is in terms of like the caliber, education, class, etc. It was just a lot easier for me. So those were the main reasons, including safety for my daughter, etc. So those were the reasons I left the States.
Okay. And if you have not met me before, I'm Cinnamon. I'm from Washington, D.C. I live in Lisbon, Portugal. I've been here for about 4.5 years. There's Christine. Hold on, we're going to bring Christine in real quick.
Yay!
And I can ask her question. Let's see, assign. Give me 2 seconds, guys, because I can't chew and walk gum and chew, eat gum and walk at the same time. So let's see if this works. Ah, it works. Perfect. Hey, Christine. How beautiful. How are you?
I'm well. I apologize for my tardiness. This daylight savings time, I was ready an hour early, and then I was like, oh, let me run an errand, and then I lost track of time. I
It's
apologize,
all good. It's
everyone.
all good. I already told the audience it's all good. So Candice just finished telling us why she left the U.S. So can you tell us where you're from and why you left the U.S.?
Yeah, I'm from Atlanta, and I left the US because I always really wanted to. My dad is an immigrant from Trinidad. My mom, I call her side of the family a nomadic tribe of women. And I've been traveling internationally by myself, or at least a flight part, since I was 10. So I was always intrigued about life abroad. I always wanted to do that. And when I left in 2017, it was just really about me forcing myself to take that leap because it was something I wanted to do since I was like 17. So when I finally did it when I was 30, I was just like, let's go. It's not gonna be pretty, we gotta do it.
No, I love it. Hey there, Deborah. She says, hi, Cinnamon, Candace, and Christine. What's going on,
Hey.
Jessica? Hey, all the C's. I just realized all our names do start with C.
Yes.
So if you haven't met me before, my name is Cinnamon. I'm from Washington, D.C., and I left for Lisbon, Portugal 4.5 years ago. I think one of the reasons that I wanted to leave, we already talked about the U.S. work culture, but also I had a bunch of friends that had left the world, in my case, in my head, prematurely. And everyone thought they had so much more time, and like one of my healthiest friends, like she did yoga, she drank green juice, she was, and she got cancer, she passed away, and I had another loved one passed away. And so I was like, listen, I don't know if I got, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 decades to live. I want to be able to say that I lived my life to the fullest and I did everything that I wanted to do. So I was turning 40. And I don't know if it's just those age milestones where you're like, I'm just going to do, whatever. And I told myself, if I don't like it, I can come back. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't feel like I did a lot of planning when I made the jump. I am a relatively resilient person, so I wasn't really concerned. But I think, depending on how you are wired, planning is something you probably should do. Right? So now, ladies, I'll start with Candice. What do you wish you would have known before moving abroad?
Oh, wow. I wish I would have known how much anxiety is created every time you have to go to immigration.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as Americans, we really don't really get how immigration can be and how you're like at the mercy of immigration, but it is a real thing when you're in somebody else's country. What about you, Christine?
Gosh, I wish I would have known that it's such a roller coaster of highs and lows of different variety, but that it's a continuous roller coaster, from, landing to 6 months to 2 years. I'm in my sixth year. It's always a roller coaster. So I wish I would have known that there's no destination. Like it's a continuous roller coaster ride that you
Yeah,
just have to learn how to, you got to learn how to like go with the flow, go with the loop-de-loops.
I
that's a
literally just
yeah.
came
Go
to that.
ahead, Candice.
No, I was gonna say I literally just came to that conclusion like 2 days ago. Because you go through all the phases of like your honeymoon phase, and then you get the settling in phase, and then I realized literally 2 days ago I was like, oh wow, this is just an ongoing journey. That's what it is.
I think I'm having that epiphany as you all are talking. I think I'm having that epiphany now because I think soon as you migrate from one stage, then you go to this other stage that is still new, but you are smarter than you were when you entered the last stage. But it is, and it's sometimes things will go on in the country or that needs fixing, or I got to apply for something, and I just don't have the mental capacity to fight. Not saying
Yeah,
fight the person, but just fight having the brain cells, fighting how long it's going to take, like just a fight.
I'm going through that fight right now, girl. I'm going through that fight right now, just preparing from transitioning from Turkey to Spain, which Christine knows about. And I'm just like, dear Lord God, I'm going to have to get all these documents together again, fingerprints, apostle birth certificates, the whole nine. And I'm just like, okay, just give me the strength, Lord. Just give me the strength. Do this one more time, one more time.
And Christine, we have a quick question to someone in the audience. Say, Christine, what's the link to your podcast? Christine's podcast, the link to that is in the description of this video. And she's at Flourish in the Foreign. So be sure to check her out, where she has a lot of interviews from people, women specifically, who have moved abroad. So please check out Christine. And of course, check out, which I'll tell you guys this again at the end, but also check out Candice at herexpatlife.com. So, no, so that's a good point. Okay. How is your life? We'll start with you, Candice. How has your life changed since moving abroad?
I think my life has changed mostly for the better. Hold on just a second. I'm so sorry
It's
about that.
okay.
I just had somebody come to my door really
No,
quickly.
it's okay. It's okay. Go ahead. I'm going to actually, you want me to mute you?
Please, thank you.
Actually, can I? Let me say if I can first. I can. Ah, did it. Ha ha. Got it. Christine, how has your life changed since moving abroad? Yeah. Oh, not the
Goodness, how much
breath.
time do we have? Like,
Not the
maybe
breath.
like my life has changed so much. I'll try to keep it succinct. In a lot of ways, my life has opened up. The way that I even consider myself has opened up. I mean, before I moved abroad, I mean, I'm still analytical, but super analytical, type A, overachiever, lawyer, doing startups, stuff like that. Going abroad gave me the opportunity to really explore my creativity. And now I can consider myself a creative in all the endeavors that I'm doing. So it's that, but also I think I've learned how to manage grief and sacrifice, because I think something that people don't consider is that you may, or at least I'll speak for myself, I realize that there is a grieving process of a life that you could have had, even if you don't want it. Like, especially when it's a roller coaster and you're like, at least if I was in Atlanta, I know it's this, and this. Instead of always feeling a little bit of uncertainty or just exhaustion, to be communicating in another language, stuff like that. So there is like that part. Like my life, I think I'm more aware of grief. I'm more aware of sacrifice. I'm more present in my life because no matter how long I've lived here, I'm still other, I'm still foreign, which is fine, but it has an interesting way of keeping you really present. So for me, I would say the biggest things have changed is that I'm very aware and present most of the time. And I've gotten to explore different aspects of myself as a professional, as a person, and that's been lovely.
I love it. Candice, how has your life changed since moving abroad?
I think for me, I've become a lot more confident. And I think, similar to Christine, just more self aware. There are so many things that you go through as an immigrant, just from trying to build community to trying to figure out the system to just small things like figuring out how like to get your groceries. Um, and all of those things have made me a more confident woman. And I've learned to accept myself a lot more. There's just been a great deal of acceptance in terms of like my flaws, my limitations, just realizing like I don't always have to be strong. I can ask for help. And there's a great deal of vulnerability that comes with that. So I think opening up to that vulnerability of being a foreigner, and sometimes that can be good, sometimes that can feel really bad. I can relate a lot to what Christine said in terms of like the grief and learning to kind of go through that process. I haven't shared it with very many people, not on a large platform, but my mother actually passed away here in Istanbul last year. And that was a very traumatic experience for a variety of reasons. Imagine, going from one weekend to the next, and then all of a sudden being very sick, then having to go to a hospital and navigate that in a foreign language, and talking to doctors and nurses and using Google Translate, and then finally things taking a turn for the very worst and passing away, and just having to navigate that, even having to deal with the U.S. Embassy. And, just FYI, if you or a loved one pass away, the United States government is not going to pay for you to go back to the U.S. You have to pay for that to be repatriated. And so I think all of that, I had to rise to the occasion. And it showed me that I had a great deal of resilience, and that it was okay for me to lean on other people because I had to. I had no other choice to do that. And so I think for me, it's just helped me to learn to go with the flow. Just go with the flow of life. And I think like those are the biggest changes that I've seen within myself as a woman.
Wow. Well, first off, so sorry for your loss. I mean, I can't even imagine and then having to navigate that in a foreign country. So, wow. You are definitely very resilient for sure. For me, how has my life changed? I think I calmed down a lot. I think that so many things that I probably stressed out about that I thought were important or stressing out over work or whatever. It just wasn't anymore. Also, like you get less involved in consumerism, which I'm very grateful for. I think because, you work so hard that you just end up buying stuff. Amazon make it real easy that you just buying stuff that what happens. And I could care less about those things right now. And I don't really shop as much. And I'm just happier just the way things are. And I think I don't think I know what made me happy when I was in the States. I think, they tell you, get a job, work, and, do things, buy stuff, be places, get the car, get the house. And then somehow happiness should be in between the mix on that. And then when you do it and you're not that happy, you're like, well, wait a minute. Well, then what else, is there? And so before I had moved, and moving abroad wasn't even on my radar, but I traveled extensively. And I remember feeling like every time I left the country, I was happy. And I don't think I was able to pinpoint why, but I knew I had a problem when I remember it was coming from Dulles and I was in the Uber. No, I was coming from Reagan. I was in the Uber and I was looking at Airbnb for the next time I was going to leave the country again. I didn't know when that was, but I was like, yo, this can't be good. I just got here, and then that's kind of how that all, went down. So, and
Yes.
we talked
Wait,
about this a little bit, but starting with you, Christine, what are the pros and what would you say are the cons of moving abroad?
Oh, wow. I mean, let's start with the cons. You're not going to be available to your friends and family like that. It's going to make you feel left out. I'm already an introvert, so I already wasn't hanging out like that anyway. But I like the invitation. Now, when you live abroad, nobody's giving you the invitation.
Yeah.
You got to see everything on Instagram. You used to be like, oh, so y'all just like hanging out without me. And they're like, you live in Spain. Like, get real. So that's a con. Trying to manage time zones is a con because you're just like, what the heck? Like, how am I supposed to do that? I think, I mean, leaving your cultural context is a con because so much of who we are, no matter how much we've traveled, how long we've lived abroad, is steeped in where we're from. Like, I'm from Atlanta. Not this recent Atlanta that's getting all over TikTok. Not that one. Like old Atlanta. That's where I'm from. So no matter how long I lived in Spain, there's certain things if I see it, I'm gonna say something like real Atlanta or whatever. Like that's a con that people won't ever understand you. Even my friends who are European or from somewhere else and they have an excellent grasp of English, if I say something like super Atlanta, like they're not gonna understand. And then they want the breakdown, and I'm not gonna break it down. It's like there's always that type of like tension, right? That so I would say those are some of the cons. Also, the exchange rate right now is a con, but that's another conversation. Pros, though, there are so many pros. The cost of travel, at least in Europe, is excellent. I mean, within Europe, I remember in 2019, in October, I bought a one-way ticket to Bangkok from Barcelona 2 days before I left. I paid like $200, something like that, something crazy. On Egypt Air, I had a layover in Cairo that wasn't even bad. It was like 2 hours. Like that stuff like doesn't happen. That might not happen anymore because of the pandemic. But like that's a pro. You can get up and get going. I would also say a big pro is that you get to see that there's another way to live life. A lot of times, like to your point, Cinnamon, having to calm down even with like the most, like the Germans, the Scandinavians are very uptight, like Europeans, they still are kind of like relaxed, like they're kind of like, I'm still gonna go on vacation and you cannot contact me. And these are my working hours. And I think that is such a pro, like having positive societal pressure to like chill the F out and like having people around you that are not slaving away for the next dollar because they're like, I could, but I'd rather rest, or it's there tomorrow. That's, I think, is a huge pro. Also, just having an amazing group of international friends, for me, is really inspiring because all my friends speak like 5 languages. So it's like a lot of pressure for me to like be fluent in Spanish and I need to go pick up French too. So for me, it's a consistent learning and it's a type of peer pressure that's not based upon, oh, you got this bag or da da da. It's actually improving me as a person. You know what I mean? And, they're not, none of my friends are mean about it, but they're like, I'll help you. I have a French friend, over the summer, she would have pool parties at her parents' home outside of the city. And her parents like, we will help you with French. Like, it's just like a different vibe and people are genuine and caring. And so those are my pros and cons.
What about you, Candice?
I guess I'll start with the cons. Also, I think, as I mentioned in the beginning, I think just the immigration process is a big con because it's a lot. I mean, if you want to live abroad and you want to be legal in a country and have legal immigration status, you have to really want it. There are costs involved, including attorneys' fees, documents, having to run here and there to get this document and that document and putting it all together, finding apartments, etc. And all of that can just be really taxing. And you have to ask yourself, how bad do you really want this life? And then when you get to the immigration and standing in line with people from everywhere around the world, and it's just, it's a lot of anxiety. Honestly, like every year when it gets to that time, I just start feeling so tense, and I just don't like that feeling. So I think that process is a con in itself. I think certain things like bureaucracy can be a con, because coming from the US, I think, considering a lot of different countries and systems, I think US is pretty efficient, and customer service is relatively good. So you go places and people do the job that they're paid for. And a lot of times they do it with a smile, or at least with a moderate amount of indifference, which I'm okay with that. Uh, and I think lastly, I think probably, and that would be specific to Istanbul, is just like dealing with certain things like um, cultural things when it comes to um, like transportation, or having to deal with maybe people not wanting to do things because you're a woman and you need a man to step in and things like that. So that can be a con, especially when you live in a culture that's more traditional and male dominated. So I've had a couple of situations happen where I've had to have my male friends step in on my behalf to speak for me, whereas in the US that I would not have to do something like that. But I think for me, the pros far outweigh the cons. And for me, that's what I keep in my, in the forefront of everything. And things like that are safety, um, access to quality food
That part.
for a pretty low cost, for a reasonable price. I think access to quality healthcare, quality and affordable healthcare. I pay for my daughter and I, we have private insurance here. We pay about $350 a month for our insurance. And that actually increased because of inflation. It was like 125 or something like that a month. So quality, quality healthcare, having a community that cares about actually seeing each other, and not getting so caught up in the hustle and bustle and grind. And like both of you mentioned, just learning to relax. I feel like being able to really rest in my feminine, even though that is I think over said sometimes, but living a soft life where I truly feel like I am in my feminine energy, that I'm seen as woman first. I feel like one of the pros is like I feel that a lot of barriers are not in my way because I'm seen as woman first and American first. And although I'm very aware that there are other people who don't get that privilege, I do understand that I have American privilege, and I do appreciate it. I'll be quite frank, because I don't really have that same privilege in my home country. So that for me, that's very much a pro, because then I have business opportunities that open up for me. People want to see me at the table. And it's just very refreshing. So I think those are some of the biggest pros.
No, I love it. I would kind of say the same things that you all said. That I think the pro. Someone asked about the family. Does it get lonely? It absolutely does. It does. It does. I've missed weddings. I've missed I've missed so much, because you have to decide, how many times you can leave the country depending on the visa that you have, and how long you can be outside of the country based on the visa you have, and take that into account in everybody's thing that they have going on and planned. Because even this summer, I stayed in the U.S. entirely too long, and I was like, oh, I can't go outside of Europe now until, I get my life and run some clock out, So it's those type of things. Immigration life is, like Candice said, you have to want it because, there's a situation now where the immigration office, they're on strike. So
Hello.
if your immigration appointment is during the strike, then you have to reschedule it. And if you planned on going somewhere and you didn't get your residency didn't get renewed, then you're stuck in the country because that's just that's just what it is. So like Hannah said, you really gotta want your residency or citizenship or whatever you are going that you want. Also, you just have to navigate relationships differently than I'm used to. I'm 40 years old coming out to a new country, and you meet new people, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, and people, do things differently. And, I hadn't had to make new friends in 30 years. I went to school with them, I grew up with them, or I went to college with them. So that's also a new space, and seeing how people navigate through those relationships as well. The pros, like each of the ladies said, it far outweighs the cons. Like, again, having access to affordable healthcare for me and my partner or whomever. Like, if you have a friend and you just pay and let's figure this out. You know what I mean? So those options, being able for family members to kind of see that this is a possibility. I think people may have said it before, but because you've done it, now people can consider retirement abroad, or they consider, education abroad. And they may not consider that. So that's actually like a super exciting feeling. Like, my sister had never had a passport ever. And she got one just to visit me, and she brought my nephew, and it was so wonderful, and it was awesome. So the pros are, particularly if you're in the process of getting citizenship, it opens up, like whether Portugal is where I live, Spain, with the ladies, it opens up, okay, what does retirement look like? Where could I be? And those options have now increased as to where I want to go and where I could potentially be because of this step that I made. So those are the pros and cons that I would say for me. Uh-oh, we lost Candice, but I'm sure she's coming back. So next question I will direct to you. Christine, what mistakes do you think you made in hindsight in regards to moving abroad?
Oh my goodness. 5 million. Okay, so you know what? Okay, let me do like the highlights that I think that could maybe really help everyone.
Sure.
I did not move abroad with intention. I moved abroad because it was a lifelong passion of mine. It kind of felt like, when am I going to do it? Am I ever going to do it? I felt a lot of sense of urgency because I guess to tell everyone, I was kind of open up to the entire world. I was one of those people like, I don't care where it is. I'll go anywhere. That's not true. That's not true. I ended up doing the Camino de Santiago, which is a pilgrimage across Spain, in 2014. And immediately after, I was like, I want to move to Spain. And like, I couldn't really figure it out. I had all these notions. I really was quite ambitious. I tried to make it happen. But I spent 3 years like networking and trying to figure out, and then I just decided to take a sabbatical and move abroad that way. I was burnt out. I didn't have the language of burnt out because that wasn't like popping like it is now. And so for me, I just moved abroad because, okay, yeah, this is a lifelong dream and I'm really tired and I just need a break. And that's not sufficient. I don't think it's sufficient enough to withstand you. You know what I mean? Because I moved to La Rioja. That's wine region here in Spain. Well, we have several wine regions. But that's like the famous one. I was drinking wine all day, all night. Okay, and the wine is excellent and it's cheap. In 2017, I'm drinking glasses of wine from 80 cents to like €2, €3 if you really want a really good Grand Reserve. Okay, I was living a life. I was living a life. And yet I had so much anxiety. I was spiraling and all of these things because I did not have intention to anchor me. I did not have a vision of a life that I wanted to create. And I think that's so important. And not just saying, oh, I want a life that's easier than the US or something like very flippant. I need to go inside and really decide what is it that I want. And by going inside, give myself permission to have a life that does not look like my peers. All of my friends are lawyers and doctors and like an engineer. Like we got one engineer. So they were living a different life that I was choosing to. I was drinking all the wine, but I felt like they were being adults and they were doing this. And I was out here just, I don't know, floating. So that's a huge issue because it really could have knocked me off my course. I had to decide, was it that I want from this experience? Was this that I want from this life? And then align all of my choices to do that and give myself permission. So that's the biggest mistake that I made because it really made living here in Spain, even with all the wine, kind of miserable for like the first 6 months until I had to be like, this is my life. I get to decide what it's going to be, and I'm going to make this decision. You also have to work at
Right.
it
That
as
part.
well.
That part.
I would
Absolutely.
also say a mistake that I have made, goodness, there's so many. Um, not not making sure, like I have several bank accounts and one of them is really good, like if you have any international charges or you withdraw money, the fees always get reimbursed and everything like that. I also have one where it doesn't, and I realized I was not cognizant, and I was like, "Oh, you take all this money out of my account. I hate this." So that's one thing to be really aware of. I think also is a big mistake is doubting yourself. I gave a lot of credence to other people when I first moved abroad because I thought, well, I don't know, And look, if it seems like some BS, it's some BS. No, you don't even have to understand the language. Like, if you get the vibe is BS, it's BS. Like, you need to trust yourself. And that's a huge mistake that I made. I gave a credence to people. I was like, I don't know. And I was like, I'm a smart person. I've been around the world, and I know some things. I needed to give myself that trust, and I had a course correct, and it took a while to make that course correction. So I think those are the biggest mistakes that I've made, and I hope that people listening and watching take something from that for sure.
No, I appreciate that. Candice, what do you think some of the biggest mistakes you made moving abroad in hindsight?
Oh wow.
Everybody gets that little giggle because, like, it's how do I choose the one?
Like, which one do I choose? I think one, not realizing the cost. Not realizing the cost that it takes to live abroad and making sure that you have an emergency fund because you just never know what's going to happen and real life happens abroad. Like, like I said, like last year when my mom passed, that was completely unexpected. And then even having enough money or having some sort of plan. When I first really took that leap to move abroad, I was just like, oh my God, I just love Rome so much. I'm just going to go there. And I wasn't thinking about anything other than just being in Rome, drinking wine, eating pasta, and living my best life. Like, I didn't think about anything like the conversions, like what transportation is going to cost me. I was paying $600-700 a month in taxis, and I was like, oh my God, like, okay, this has got to stop. Um, and then just like, how do I really want to structure my life? Because if I'm going to stay abroad, and okay, maybe 5 years, 6 years from now, I'm going to be 50 plus years old. How do I want that to look like? So I think I just didn't really have any real plan, and I had to sit down and really think about how that was going to look and what I was going to do and be more strategic about my visa program that I chose for myself because I wasn't thinking that. And a lot of people make that mistake. They think, I just want to get to that country, however I can get to that country. And then you choose a visa program that you can't transfer out of. You can't transfer that into another visa program. So I think that was probably really my biggest mistakes. And then I think not understanding that you go through the phases of the immigrant expat lifestyle. You're going to have those highs and those lows. And I was not prepared emotionally for those lows. And I thought something was wrong with me. I was like, what's happening? I was so happy. Did I make a mistake?
Mm-hmm.
And then I kept thinking, how was my life going? What would my life be if I went back to the States? And then I was okay, no, it really wouldn't be great. I'm just, let's just put that behind me. That's not going to work. And really just sitting with my emotions. So I think those are probably the biggest mistakes I made.
No, I think that's great. I wouldn't you talk about when you add just the emotion of going back and forth. And I know for anyone who's been listening to me for the past month, I've been stressing that a lot, just how much it costs to live abroad, because I don't think I saw it the first year. I didn't see it the second year. I don't think I really got it to the 3 years in. Okay. And I think more so because stuff happens. And when the stuff happens, you have to pay for it. Like, so for example, if we're just taking America in general, half of people in America live in paycheck to paycheck, more than half of the people, right? So if you take that outside of the country and you're like, okay, if being in America is a financial struggle, assuming if you move abroad it's going to be better and that's your only reason for moving, then you can find yourself having a rude awakening for a variety of reasons. One, immigration. You do not know, and no one can tell you how much immigration is going to cost you. So there's some fees associated with applications and things like that. But let's say, your visa situation changes, or immigration decides to change, or they drop the program you were in. That can affect you financially in the form of taxes. It can affect you in the form of now you have to get an attorney. I had various friends who had to fight with various landlords who just didn't want to return a deposit because they made up something in the air. So now you have these, fees for lawyers that you did not anticipate. And now you may have to leave this apartment even though you may have paid a year up front because the roof cave in and they gonna feel like they gotta fix it. So much random things can occur. And it's crazy because as much as I hate that the US is so litigious, on one hand,
You can appreciate it.
on one hand, you kind of appreciate it because at least you feel like if someone does you so wrong or take your money, you can at least take them to court. You know what I mean? You at least can go to court and figure this out. Here, you might have to take that on the chin. You know what I mean? And so definitely you may not prepare for those. And I hear so many people like, oh, well, healthcare this is cheaper. Granted, it is. But that is not all that you pay when you're living abroad. Like many of you know, I had to pay a year up front. I wouldn't have to do that in the United States of America. I wouldn't have to pay rent up front for a year. I wouldn't have to do that. Not to mention, so much can happen in just that year. Right now, as we speak, it is raining. It has been raining. I have a leak going on in my bedroom. And my landlord is wonderful. Thank you God, I have had great landlords since I've been here. So he's been in constant communication with me and things like that. But it's like, people will come in and they'll look at that like, Then they'll leave. Then a week later, And I'm like, so look, y'all, it's a whole apartment. How do we deal with water? Do we you know what I mean? Are we just gonna look at this? So I'm like, well, what's the next step? Oh, well, this contractor couldn't figure it out, so we're gonna call the insurance company. So I'm like, Jesus, Joseph, Mary, we're about to go into rainy season of Portugal because it's about to be December. So I'm like, so what is happening again? You know what I mean? And I have a wonderful landlord. I love him and his wife. So. It's just that had nothing to do with what was I doing? Pros and cons. I just had to share that real quick.
Yeah.
Pros and cons. So everything they said. No mistakes. We were doing mistakes. So oh shoot. Okay, so the mistakes I've made. Wow. Okay, so I was really open and green when I first moved, and I was open to befriend anyone. I was open to love. I was just open. I was just like, look, I left the U.S. I'm leaving all that baggage. I should have kept some baggage. I should have kept a little bit of that baggage. Ooh, it's hard because, like I said, I have friends back home that you can trust their word, and not that sounds ridiculous. I'm a city girl, and I just should know that. So I beat myself up. Most of I end up dating a liar, and spent a lot of just time and energy and heartbreak in that because I was so open and not as skeptical, and because not just romantically, but maybe I may have engaged. It was just even with, platonic friends that if I look back at it when I first moved, I was just you here to meet people, people, let's do it. And I probably should have evaluated some of those situations and relationships a little bit more. And so now I'm all bitter. so so
It's
mistakes.
normal though. I think everybody, that's like a rite of passage moving abroad is dating a liar. Because you're like, I don't know. Do they do this here? You're like, no, they're a liar.
I
Everybody
can't
has to
believe
do
I
that though.
dated enough of them beforehand, so I already knew.
That's what I'm saying. You would think I would have known because my record back home was good. I came here and I was just like I was in a Disney movie apparently, and I was just out here, like love. I was just wilding.
I think you know what I think when it comes to dating abroad though, you can get swept up because they give you so much romance.
Yeah.
They give you the romance that you don't get back in the States. They're very chivalrous. They're very like, oh, you're so beautiful. Oh, here's some flowers. They know everything to say, everything to do, the most romantic places to take you in the city. And so you get caught up. So you get a pass, girl. Like, do not be
Thank
girl.
you.
Do not be.
She said it's a rite of passage. Other mistakes I made. I'm sure there are more. I can't think of them right now, but when they pop up, I will act like I have something to say and remind, because I want people to be prepared. I'm definitely not saying don't move abroad. I feel like just online, everyone shares this like, oh my God, move here, it's wonderful. Da, da. And granted, it is, but I think when you're going through it or you're stuck or you're struggling with something, you think it's only you because everybody else is saying how great it was. And for those of you who follow me, listen, I had a whole breakdown in the Sheraton Hotel in Lisbon in Sardinia. Like it was, I don't even know how long I had been there, but I just couldn't pull it together. I went to the Sheraton to get lunch of all places because I just was struggling with my Portuguese at the time. This was around early going, and I just cried. I FaceTime my best friend, and I just cried. I was like, "Did I make a mistake? Like, what am I doing here? I'm in a hotel eating lunch. Like, I just straight had." Melted. I can't look at the Sheraton without thinking about that now. Because my bank is over there. And I'm like, so there's these moments where you're just going to have these, like Christine said, you're going to have these emotional ups and downs. You're going to miss family. You're going to do all of those things. And you'll really get to test your resilience. This is not for everybody. It is not for the faint of heart. So my whole goal is just to have you consider these things and know a little bit about yourself before you make their leap. Because there are people here that are unhappy. And they probably were unhappy in the US and they thought they were going to be happier when they move abroad. And for a minute you are happy, but you also have so much other stuff to worry about that the things that whatever made you an unhappy person before, you just can't focus on it right now. But then when life gets normal abroad, you can go back to being that very unhappy person that you were in the US. So I would just say really find out what your emotional situation state is before you go rolling out, because moving abroad is not going to solve your problems.
Absolutely not. I just want to add that I think similar to like entrepreneurship, I think that moving abroad and living abroad is like, it's another form of like personal development. Like it will really expose you to who you are. Like you can be like, yeah, I'm this. Moving abroad, living abroad really exposes you. Puts a mirror up into your face. Like, is this you? Because this is how you're handling this stressful situation. This is how you're handling X, Y, and Z. And so I find that people definitely put the highlight reels on Instagram, on YouTube, and I just want people to know. I just want people who are watching to have a lot of discernment. Some people are selling stuff to you. That's why everything is great and everything is great. So just, whatever. You need to be really mindful of that. And also, not everyone is very transparent. Some people, you don't know everybody's business. Okay, that's fine. People can be private, but some people are not living the life you think that they're living. They're not, I don't know, selling bananas and now that's how they make all their money. That's not how, they have a trust fund. They got a divorce settlement. They got something. There's a lot of stuff. So just be mindful of that. You're getting the highlight reels, and just be really discerning with who you're taking advice from, how you're romanticizing and how you're going to escapism, because people are lying to you. They're lying. Okay, I'm sorry. It's true because sometimes I just see things and I'm like, that's a bold faced lie. I
Yep.
used to live in Barcelona. What the
Yep.
heck are you talking about?
Yep.
Like, or wherever. I'm like, mm-mm. It's you gotta be careful out there in these content creator streets. I'll
Yeah.
just say this. All like I know so many people. I've interviewed so many people for the podcast. The vast majority of people who are living abroad sustainably with longevity, happily, are not content creators.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? We're all content creators, but that's not our main bag.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you gotta be really discerning with that, is what I'll say. Okay? A lot of people are living abroad happily, doing whatever, and they have not picked up a TikTok, haven't done nothing. So just take that for what you will. Not everybody has to go abroad and become a content creator also. But that's all I'll say about that.
No,
No.
I love it. I love it. Now, this is an important fact. Like, if people are just telling you that it's great and this is their full time job and they don't have anything else, just be wary. Just be wary of that. If you have any questions, we can start the questions now. Just go ahead and type your questions and we'll present that. Now, with the current economy doing some things between inflation and that type of things, any recommendations or things you have to say about that? We can start with Christine.
Yeah, go somewhere where the the local currency is weaker than the dollar. I live in Europe, so that's not the case right now,
Right.
and it sucks a lot. Uh, it does. It does. It sucks. So, yeah, make sure you are at an advantage that way. Make sure you have your savings. Make sure you have your remote gig, your business, what have you. Try to have multiple streams of income.
Yeah.
Multiple streams of income is so important because, like the pandemic, you don't know what's going to happen with the various wars happening now. You don't know what's going to happen, and you don't
Absolutely.
want to be caught out there abroad and be hemmed up. It's not a
Yeah.
good look.
No, and you bring up a good point. There are a lot of stuff popping off in the world. People are going to war and things like that. And as an immigrant, you really need to be on your P's and Q's. Like, if in fact you have to leave or do whatever or things change, you are still an immigrant, right? So that is something that you have to have some concern about, depending on where you are and how things may change and what you would need to go. Like, even in Candice's case, she's like, "Look, I'm here, but I'm about to roll out and go here." You got to be able to dip and do it. You know what I mean? And you can't fall apart when you got to hurry up and come up with a plan B. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this is just the reality. This is the stuff that's not sexy. It's not it's not on Instagram, but it's real life. So again, I'm never about the doom and gloom, even though some people interpret it that way. But this is just about being transparent and just being real clear as to what can potentially happen. Hey there, Diane, Global Granny, and says, "Hi, ladies, glad caught this live. Hope it is helpful." Christine, this is an old question, but again, Christine's link to her podcast is in the description of this video, in addition to Candice's website, and she is looking for people to test out her app. So please check the links in the description for those living in Spain or the student visa teaching assistant. I have to do resident paperwork every 8 months.
Oh,
Ooh,
wow.
that's
Oh wow! Oh,
so
you're auxiliar de conversación. Okay, yeah.
I'm so sorry. Hola,
Nice.
hola. Global Grand Limit Sound of Use changes you. Absolutely. Sorry to hear about your loss. Yes, Candace, totally sorry to hear about your loss. Everyone in the comments is saying they're sorry to hear about your loss. So you definitely have some prayers and some hugs on that. Hi, Nana. Just made it. Okay, Nana says it cost about $1,000 from the U.S. to Bangkok. Shoot, probably more now. Atlantis asks, "Do you feel lonely abroad navigating life without family?" Yep.
I
Absolutely.
personally don't.
Good.
I don't because I didn't have a really close relationship with my family back home. And that was one of the reasons why I decided to move abroad because I was like, they never come see me anyways. We
Yeah, yeah,
never
yeah.
really anyways. And so I was like, okay, I felt completely comfortable. I mean, but you do have lonely moments, but I realize like that's just a normal, natural part of life.
Right. And Nana says, as a U.S. Senate, it makes her appreciate the hard work immigrants that came here even more did before. Absolutely. Wow, wow, wow. That would be problematic. Okay, Kate, let's see.
I'll just add to Candice's thing on loneliness. I had an episode, the first episode of season 5 of the podcast, and my guest Erin, she really had something really profound. She was like, "You need to understand how you deal with loneliness, who you are in loneliness, because you can have lots of friends and still feel very lonely."
Yeah.
And I'm really blessed that I'm like a true blue introvert. And so I always have things going on in my brain and I always got projects. And I'm also kind of a natural connector. So I always have things to do. So I have never really felt lonely. Like I maybe had maybe about 5 days in 6 years where I was like, I'm lonely. But that's me and that's who I am. But I think it's such a profound thing to think about. How do you handle loneliness? And how can you fortify yourself? I'm also lucky that I have a lot of friends and family that are very mobile and they have no problem being like, I haven't heard from you this week. I'm about to fly into Spain. I'll be like, I'm busy, you know, but that's not everybody has that, but
Right.
I'm blessed to have that as well.
No, and that's a good point because my friends don't have a problem of flying in, and I think that's helped. But also, I have felt lonely often because my love language is touch and like physical touch. So it's super hard for me because you can't just be hugging and touching up on like your new friends. It might be weird, right? But I'm huggy with my friends, or if they're busy, I'll go run errand with them and just be in the car. Like that's how my life was in DC because everybody's schedule was so crazy. So even with my best friend, if she had to run errands, I'm like, all right, I'm about to hop in the car and we just, we're gonna do it. So for me to have that connection and be able to reach out and touch people I love, that does affect me. And I wasn't necessarily that tight with my family, but I ended up making my friends my family. And so not being able to get a hug from them or, kiss their face or play in their hair or do whatever the crazy stuff I was doing, I can't do that anymore. So for me personally, it does affect me. It affects me. I do get, I do have a problem with that. So that does suck for me. Okay. So how difficult was it to make local friends in your new country? I found it pretty easy to make friends. And again, I'm an introvert as well, so I don't be wanting to do a whole bunch of them. Just
It
Candice.
was easy for me
I
as
think
well. Like, I'm an introvert. Like, I think this is the thing. I don't have that type of belief. Like, people are like, it's hard to make friends after college, 30, whatever. I never subscribed to that, and that's never been my experience in Atlanta, in Miami, or anywhere else I've lived, or here. And now I've lived in 3 different cities in Spain. It's never been my experience. As a true blue introvert that likes to be at home, I have lots and lots of friends and I always have things to do. But I think it's because I'm also very particular and I have no problem cultivating the community that I like.
Yeah.
I don't just be going to things just because, oh, there's people, I just have to try to fit in. I've never been that type of person. I like custom, bespoke everything. And and I like that in my community too. So, but I have no problem going out and cultivating that community and being like, I like this person, I like that person, and now we're coming together, we're growing and growing and growing. And so I always go out and do things that are within my interests. Because if I meet somebody else, cool. If I don't, I'm still happy. I'm not gonna be like, oh, and I left my house for this. Because that's a big issue for introverts. Because then I'll be like, I'm not leaving my house because the last time
Never
I
coming out
left,
my
it
house
was
again.
so that's my thing. That's how I've managed it.
No, I
I
love it, Candice.
for me, it's been a situation where when you're talking about local friends, where like we're talking about locals from the country, that can sometimes be different just depending on the country you're in. In Italy, I found where for me, Italians for me were very friendly, and but there's always this line between them just being cordial and friendly and then them inviting you in a more personal way. I've found that Turkish people will invite you in a more personal way.
Hmm.
So I've had that experience here in Turkey. So I have people in my immediate community. Matter of fact, I just had lunch today with my neighbor's daughter who is pregnant. She can speak English, and I bought her a baby a gift for her baby because I wasn't able to come to her baby shower since I was in Sicily. And so she's like, "Oh my God, Candice, when you come back, let's go out to lunch." So we went out to lunch and we had a good time. But that doesn't necessarily happen in every culture because some cultures are very insular. So I
Hmm.
think you just have to understand that when you're moving abroad, what culture you're going to be moving into. But in terms of actually building community with other foreigners and my fellow countrymen,
My
similar to you,
countrymen.
Christine, I curate that whole thing because for me is quality over quantity. And one of the things that I always say is that I build community based on mutual values, vision, purpose, benefits, and and that's how do we mesh in those ways, and then I can build community with you. But I think that you can there's so many wonderful people on the planet, honestly. If you just put in the effort, you will meet your tribe. You will meet your tribe.
Yeah. And I think, especially coming from the U.S., for me personally, and this is no disrespect to people, like as Candace said, my fellow countrymen, I did not move out of a country to be around a whole bunch of Americans. That's just not what my goal was. I did not say I want to move out of America just to have some American friends. Wasn't even on my radar. I was not even interested in that. And even still, it's like I'm in Portugal. My whole goal is not just to be around a whole bunch of Americans, right? So, but ultimately, I think you have to figure out what you're looking for and make sure to not be so transactional. Because I think with a lot of new relationships, people just come in just wanting something. They're like every time they asking you questions, just wanting something. And I'm like, have you ever stopped to consider like that you should give as well? And so America does that strong. Like they are very like come in asking, wanting, give it to me, give it to me. And that's a major turnoff for a lot of people. It's definitely a turnoff to me. And I don't really care too much how anybody feels about it because like I don't know you now. And so this is the impression that you gave me is that you're self-centered and you're a narcissist. And so whether I'm right or wrong, I don't care. I just don't want to be a part of it. So I will just fall back and not really be interested. So I think people are interested. Like Christine said, like you just really gotta understand that some people just aren't, they may not be happy with themselves in the US, and them leaving a country don't all of a sudden make them happy with themselves in another country, right? So you just have to have some discernment and see, if people are genuinely good to you because they are good people or because they want something from you or they want you to do something or they need help with something. And if you do need help with something, just lead with that. Like, listen, I know I don't really know you, but I'm like struggling to figure this out. Can you like give me some guidance? That just come transparent with people. Like just be super transparent with people and it'll help your relationships. But when you become transactional with people, especially people you do not know, and you may think you know them on the internet because you've seen them, but you do not know them. So just consider that when trying to build a tribe. Hey, James, thanks for joining us live. Jamaican on the move. The best decision I made was moving to South Africa. That's what's up. Too nervous. Okay, guys, if you have
I
any
agree, Cinnamon.
questions,
I'll just say you have to move with the spirit of reciprocity. I
please.
don't know how people. I mean, I've seen people join WhatsApp groups and they're just like, "Hey, I'm here. Take care of me."
Yes.
Who wants to show me around? And I'm like, I'm sure the tour guide who gets paid money wants to do that.
Yeah, you
Like
hit
a
it.
lot of people, they don't under, and it makes me think about the quality of their relationships at home. Because I'm just like, you just step into this place and you don't even lead with the spirit of reciprocity. And I think people are like, well, what do I have to give? Because I'm new here. And I'm like, if you don't know what you can give in community, anywhere you're dropped in the world, that's an issue. That's the you gotta go back. That's a you and your therapist kind of thing. You know what I mean? Because it's like you have to move with the spirit of reciprocity. If you really want community, if you really want to build relationships that people are going to hold you down, you got to hold people down too.
Yes.
But this is the thing
So,
that I've learned is that if you don't know how to create community back home, you're not going to have a clue of how to create it abroad.
That
And
part.
is
That
one of
part.
the biggest that is one of the biggest problems I think that I've had, particularly, sadly to say, with a lot of Americans. And a lot of it, like you said, is either like the transactional vibe that's going on. Because for me, community is about really being there. Hey, do you need anything? Let's come together to do things. And what I feel happens for a lot of people is that for most people, their sense of community is just like coffee meet and greets. That's it. I'm like, that's not community. Be sitting in a WhatsApp group and just being there, that's not community. Not for me, anyways. So you have to actually know what a community is, what authentic community looks like and feels like. And one of the things that I always say is that you cannot have true community if you do not feel a sense of responsibility for one another. We're responsible for one another. And that is even more true when you live abroad and you're foreigners and you're subject to things like your landlord wanting to throw you out because his great niece decided to move back and they want to give the apartment that you paid rent for to that niece. Like, hold on, wait. You're going to need community for that. And if you just sat in a WhatsApp group being selfish and not giving, people are going to be more reluctant to help you. So yeah.
No, that's yes, for sure. All right, we have this question. Zora, I apologize in advance if this question was already answered. How do you handle healthcare and doctor visits? I'll just start that real quick, and then we can move to the rest of the ladies because I've been having a bunch of doctor visits in Portugal. I have insurance. I got it through my bank, although now I have to cancel the insurance I got through my bank because my bank's been interesting lately. To get a different insurance company. So the insurance company I got through my bank initially, you guys know, 4 years ago, I just got whatever was enough for a visa. And then the world shut down, COVID happened. So I was stuck in a house in Europe for two years. And so I just didn't really evaluate health insurance. So now this past year, I've been having to go to the doctor a lot. I realized the insurance that I have, is not accepted by half of the stuff, half of the hospitals I go to locally. Ain't that fun? So I've been paying out of pocket, but it hasn't been much. So I haven't complained about it, but I do need to sit down and, do another insurance. So doctor visits, I had to go to the ER once for an ear infection. I just went to the hospital. I paid, I think, like €100. But if I would have had the appropriate health insurance, I wouldn't have to pay that. But if I was America, I would have had to pay a leg and an arm. So I didn't really complain. So that's what for emergency care and doctor visits. I just set an appointment with. So I have like internal intestinal issues. So I'd look for a gastro doctor. And so I set the appointments with that doctor specifically. So if you have a specific issue, you just look for that doctor. And then I would recommend finding the doctor you like first and then choosing the hospital, which is what I did. So I chose the doctor first and I just chose whatever hospital he was associated with. And that is kind of how I did it. Some people may do that differently, but that's the doctor visits, believe it or not, were actually super easy for me here in Portugal. What do you say, Candice?
I love the healthcare system here in Turkey. It is very good, and it actually ranks higher than a healthcare system in the U.S. because people always ask me about that. I'm like, Turkey's healthcare system is wonderful. Their hospitals look like five-star hotels, and like your experience there in Portugal, you don't have any barrier where you have to see your primary caregiver before you can go see a specialist. If you think your heart is hurting, you can immediately just book your appointment with the cardiologist, or whatever specialist it is that you think that you need to see. I do have private health insurance. They have public health care too, and I have been to the hospital once, the public hospital once, and I think I paid like $1 or something like that for the treatment that I had to get. But obviously, I prefer a private because then you have access to better quality hospitals and doctors. So for me, I usually try to find doctors that speak at least some English. But the great thing here is that if you go to a main hospital, they have translators. So you book your appointment, you go to like where they call the international section, and they ask you what your language is. They'll call a translator to come to meet you and
Nice.
accompany you to your doctor's appointment so that you can speak to your doctor in whatever language.
Portugal
So
doesn't have that, y'all.
I love
I don't
that.
think so. If they do, I ain't never seen it. So don't come
I
running over here to Portugal getting that you getting that treatment.
So for me, I absolutely love that. And
Yeah.
I don't care whether I mean, it's just super easy to make an appointment, whether it's going to your gynecologist or a dentist. And like I said, they even have really good dentists here. If you do have to pay out of pocket, it's really not that much. I had a situation earlier last month where I had to go to the doctor and they wouldn't accept my insurance for that appointment, and I got like an MRI, a scan, X-ray, all this stuff, and it only cost me like $400 out of pocket. And I was like, that's fine. I actually had to go with last month. Now, at the beginning of last month, when I was in Sicily, I had to go to the emergency room because I ripped my hamstring at the airport, and I was rushed from the airport to the emergency room, and I was expecting to pay something, and they just rolled me right out of there. They're like,
Wow.
okay, Santa. I was like, okay, great. So um, for me, I absolutely love it. But I say this, before you decide to relocate, if you know that healthcare is a really big issue for you, do some research on that end to see what that's going to look like, because not every place has good healthcare. I lived in Puerto Rico too, and honest for God, I was scared to go to the doctors in Puerto Rico. I was so happy to leave because of that. No offense to Puerto Ricans, because I love the island, but the healthcare system is not good. So yeah.
No, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Okay, this question is for Candice. First, I'm so sorry for your loss. I hope you are well. I'm in the beginning stages of relocating to Turkey. I'm a single and childless and have visited Turkey before. What's your question, love? Okay, sorry, that part wasn't the question. My bad. Here's the question. What area, in your opinion, would you say is the best for an American immigrant once they first move there?
Oh wow. Um, it honestly, it just really depends on what you want to experience in
Oh, sorry,
Turkey.
she said Istanbul in particular.
Oh, Istanbul in particular. Okay, Istanbul in particular. I really love my area, Kadıköy. Kadıköy is on the Asian side. I know a lot of times when people come to Istanbul, they get caught up in the European side of Istanbul because that's where all of the main historical and touristic things are. But if you really want to know what living in Turkey is like, then you have to come to the Asian side. And so I say the most foreign friendly area is going to be Kadıköy, the district of Kadıköy. And within the district, there are many different neighborhoods. If you like it really lively and like more boho, that's my neighborhood of Moda. That's very boho. If you want a little bit bougie and upscale, then I would say like Swadier or Jade Bostan. If you and I would say probably that if you're child free, you are single and you're ready to mingle, then I would say like either Moda or Swadier. If you just really like the European side, then I'm gonna say Beşiktaş area or Ortaköy, because it's not as crowded as the other places, and it's very foreign friendly, accessible by transport with public transportation. And then if you want to date, there are plenty of Turkish men that will date you, girl.
Nice. Okay, you heard that. And she named a bunch of places, so you're gonna have to go back and rewind
Yeah,
that and just, take some notes on
you
that.
can always DM me on Instagram if you didn't
Absolutely.
catch all that.
So you can see her Instagram at the bottom of her name, everyone's Instagram. So please reach out to these ladies. They are wonderful, but not transactionally. Remember that. We just talked about that. Just, be considerate. Okay. Can Candice explain what visa she first chose, should have chosen, might help someone, please? Good question.
Okay, so when I first moved to Italy, I got a student visa to study Italian for both myself and my daughter, because that was the easiest visa to get at the moment. But this is what I realized very quickly. I said, oh, wow, I'm 40 and I don't want to be going to school for the rest of my life just to stay in a country. So how can I shift? How can I make this happen? So with the student visa, particularly in Italy, I think it works similarly in Spain and Portugal, that you can shift from a student visa to a work visa if you get hired by in a a local company. But then I also knew that I did not want to be working for nobody, so I was like, that's not gonna work either. So when I ended up finding myself stuck in Turkey during the COVID lockdown, I did a lot of research because I was like, I need really a path of ease. And so I ended up purchasing property because in 2020, during the height of COVID, all the prices for real estate dropped. And so I bought my apartment here in Istanbul, I want to say for like 45,000 US dollars at the time. And through that property, it allowed property ownership visa. Of course, now they've gone through a lot of changes with the laws, and I'm currently having to hire an attorney to help me with my immigration because they they changed my immigration status when they weren't supposed to. So, but that's what I got, and that's the visa program that I found here in Turkey that suited me best.
I don't know what the transition is from student to work visa here in Portugal, but this is what I will say, that the job market in Portugal is not great. So if you start off here as a student and you feel like, oh, I'm just gonna go work, you're gonna be in a worse situation just financially. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, at least as it relates to Portugal. Hey there, Deborah. Sorry, thanks for joining, and then so glad we got to see you a little bit. Okay. Nana says transactional is very American, absolutely. Part of the reason I want to move abroad, I have an awesome community in America, but the culture is not geared toward the general average person. Okay. Let's see, Dr. Canfield, you have helped my family move more than you know. Thank you. One general question: do you think retired people go through an easier process in Portugal than younger who are still working? So this is what I'll say. So I'm not retired. I don't know how young you talking, but I am not retired. I am still working. Granted, I'm a business owner, so it's a little bit different. I would imagine if you show that you have enough money for your visa to be here, that it could. I'm assuming it could be better. I'm not really sure. I think younger people may just have a harder time, just in general, whether they're in America or Portugal, wherever. Just having enough experience that will pay you what you need in order to sustain your stay long term is just probably something that young people are going to have a harder time doing, probably in a lot of countries. But again, I work. What you also, if you need to, what I am telling Americans right now who are retiring this year, I just want them to be very conscious of where we are globally and economically. And if you are old enough to have participated in or seen a retirement account, in 2008, you understand the retirement accounts lost 23% of their value. So that affected people who were retiring. Some had to go back to work and things like that. So just consider, if you may lose some percentage in your retirement account and you're paying your bills in euros. So not only do you lose, who knows what the potential, I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm just saying I want people to be just prepared. But if there is some loss in your retirement account and you are responsible for paying bills in euros, let's say if the US dollar is just 10% less, which has been pretty standard since I've lived here, just on a normal 10% less. So you're saying 23%, maybe not, from losing out of your retirement account, and an additional 10% loss minimum on the currency side. So you got to decide if it makes sense for you. Because if someone were to say, okay, you're going to move here and you may lose 30% off of your retirement, would it be worth it? I can't make that call for you, but I would think hard about it. So hope that's helpful. So that's what I have on that. When you travel, you're either engaged with community. Hi, this question is for Candice. Candice is hot tonight. Let's see. Okay. Candice, what made you decide to relocate to Turkey? Well, she shared that a little bit. Have you learned the process of the language? And I'm learning the language, and it is hard. So you shared that, but if you don't mind just briefly sharing what made you go to Turkey
Sure.
real quick. Sorry.
I actually got stuck in Istanbul during the COVID lockdown. I was living in Rome, and when I arrived in Turkey, I want to say 3 days later, got a notice from the Turkish government that all flights to and from Italy were going to be canceled due to COVID. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to be stuck here. And I just decided to stay because of the currency conversion. I was like, okay, in the middle of a crisis, I would prefer to live somewhere where my US dollar is going further. And I just honestly decided to stay. In terms of the language, yes, Turkish is the hardest language that I have had to learn. It is my fourth language and it's very hard. And you do need to know Turkish if you want to survive here. If you actually want to live here, you need to learn some level of Turkish. And if you want to integrate into society, you have to know Turkish. There's just no other way. And my Turkish is söyle böyle.
Are there any places to look outside of Lisbon and Porto? Should be looking approximately for approximately to the sea and some nightlife. I don't know, honey. I don't care about nightlife. So, and I think it's in Lisbon. I couldn't tell you where the people go. I'm the wrong person to ask on that one. If you want sea, then obviously the coast in any neighborhood along the train line could be an option. But some nightlife, I got nothing for you on that one. I would imagine Lisbon. It just whatever's right outside the train line and but I got nothing on nightlife. Cinnamon, would you buy property in Portugal? Okay, so I was attempting to buy property a little bit last year because I had gotten so stressed out about the inability to get an apartment and I didn't want to have to go through this again, right? So I had a certain amount that to me it only made sense to purchase in Portugal, and this is my opinion. Okay, so that means it comes from me. So my opinion was that the prices were the prices just didn't make sense to me. The real estate prices didn't make sense. And based on what the economy was, what the job market is, when you look at countries or cities that have higher wages or higher expenses, usually there is a job market that will support that. Like usually the because of that, people migrate to that place. That's not necessarily the case with Portugal. So even though the real estate prices were increasing, the jobs and anything that would keep someone here were not, right? So for that, when I said if I was going to purchase a property, it was really, of course, for me, but also with the expectation that I would never sell it, right? That I or go at least go in assuming that I can never sell it. And I say that to say that you have to really understand what the culture of real estate is in the country in which you're moving. And it fascinates me how many Americans will come to a country that they don't know the tax laws, the capital gains laws, or any of that on real estate. And they're like, oh, I'm going to come here and flip. I had people say that to me. Oh, I was thinking about coming to, and flipping property. That's not even a culture. First of all, the capital gains tax in Portugal, I don't remember what it is, but I feel like it's in the 40 percentage-ish, right? That's a lot.
That's a lot.
If you just understand the Portuguese culture in general, you realize people don't really sell property like that. Like people own properties. Like your landlord probably owns more than one property, right? They pass it down from family to family. Part of it could be because of capital gains tax, but two, it could be a variety of reasons. I don't know. I haven't figured that part out yet. So when I was thinking about purchasing property in Portugal, I was like, okay, it cannot exceed this amount because I did the numbers. It cannot exceed this amount because this is the amount I'm saying that even if I'm never able to sell this thing, I'm okay with that. Whether I rent it, whether I'm living there for the rest of my life, whatever the case may be. And so that number, the number I gave and what I was seeing out here wasn't really making sense. So I found a couple properties. I got outbidden on some. And then I just started to learn the tax process and I was only doing it if I was getting a Portuguese loan. I was not taking home equity out of anything in the States and bringing it over here. Home equity is still debt. Mm-hmm. It is not magical money that came out of nowhere. Home equity is debt. So was I going to take USD debt? This is just me. If you did it, rock with it, fine. I wasn't going to take USD debt and bring it over here to euros. That just didn't rock with me. So I couldn't make that make sense in my head. So I just didn't do it. If one would have came up that I was looking at because it the property was good enough to rent if I wasn't going to be in it because it was close to the metro, it was close to a grocery store, it was only one bed. So it had a perfect, type of situation for someone who wanted to live there, whether they be an immigrant or whether they were local. That was what that property gave, and I didn't get it. So then I was like, my immigration meeting come up, I gotta do something. And so now I'm renting in the apartment inn. So that was a long answer. I hope it was helpful. That was a long answer to your question, but sorry. Okay. What has been the language learning process been like? My goal is to go hard and learn Portuguese in the first 12 months and move to Portugal so that I can be at least speaking. Okay, for Portuguese, this is what I will say. I am 40 some odd years old, right? And I would say I've been doing the thing. I just had this conversation today. I've been doing the things that I know how to do for a lot of years. And so initially there was a lot of frustration for me feeling like I just wasn't picking it up. I feel like I wasn't learning it fast enough, right? And I think for adults, particularly if you're an overachiever or you're a high achiever and you killing it in your job, you may create this timeline that your brain may not necessarily feel like they agree. And you can't beat yourself up for that. Now, just like anything, I think learning, because I'm also trying to learn Python now, y'all. Oh, girl. So what you forget is how much time it takes to learn anything new. Even if you're a quick learner, you probably known this thing for a while and things associated with it, you can learn really quickly, right? So if you have some expertise on some language, then you may be okay. For me, I knew broken Spanish. But try not to put a time frame for you. Just rock with it. Understand you need to give it 2 to 3 hours a day. Sorry, don't nobody want to hear that, but it's the truth. You got to give it 2 or 3 hours. You need to be listening to it, just whether you have it on, like I have it on when I'm cleaning, so you can hear it often, because you have to start to develop the muscle memory in your mouth to say the word. So it's a lot to learning language. And if you are, it's not that older people can't learn. It's just we learning new stuff. Sometimes we haven't really had to do it a lot. So we forget how much time it takes. And if you're dedicated, you could do it. If you're listening to it and you got the songs and stuff, it could work out. It's just, I think even for myself, I was just like, okay, I should have it by whatever. And even, people who teach in the language, they was like, girl, no, it don't. I have a friend who speaks 6 languages, and she was like, I really, really got it on year 6. And I was like, damn it. Like, what are we, like, what? And she could, so I think there's also a difference between being able to communicate and being super, super, why can't I think of the word? Can't think of the English or Portuguese right now. But I can still communicate what I need to do. But am I sounding like a foreigner still? Yeah, I am. But don't let that stress you out. But I would say let your brain, be gentle with yourself. Chiming in, is affordable to live in Turkey and Italy, or what affordable places in Italy? I need to ask.
I think with Turkey is becoming less affordable. With the inflation, rent prices, honestly, in a lot of places, especially places you want to live, I'm finding them just as high as in the US. Honestly, my original goal was to rent this apartment out that I'm living in and then use that to offset the cost of me living in a nicer area. At the time that I came, I want to say a 2 3 bedroom apartment in a very nice neighborhood was about 700 to 900 US dollars. Now it's almost 3,000 US dollars. Yeah. So for me, that's the same as trying to rent an apartment in Florida somewhere, honestly. So I don't find it as affordable because a lot of the Turkish landlords are price gouging right now. Actually, they put out a law that they're not supposed to increase the rents any more than I think like 20% because, because of the inflation. But still, they're kind of taking advantage of. People are taking advantage of foreigners, so it's really quite a shame. In terms of Italy, and let me back up to Turkey. There are still affordable places you can find, especially in southern Turkey. So if you're looking at southern Turkey and maybe like Izmir, Antalya, um, some on Alanya, you can still find some really decent, relatively decent deals. And I personally do like that area, like Antalya, Alanya area. It's really cute and by the water. In terms of Italy, there are affordable places in Italy. Sicily, I just came back from Sicily. Now, Sicily was not for me. That was a big fat no from the universe for me, but not because Sicily is horrible, excuse me, in and of itself, but the rents are relatively nice there, decent there. I mean, you can rent maybe like a 1, 2 bedroom apartment for 500 or 600 US dollars a month. So I think that that's still very affordable. The food there is very affordable. Southern Italy in general is quite affordable. The only thing when you're moving there, you do have to be just kind of cautious of which neighborhoods you're going to be in, but I think you can still find some great deals for both renting and purchasing in southern Italy in particular.
And thank you. And so, Christine, I'm sorry. She was like, wait, I need to hear Christine and her experience with healthcare. Talked about your experience in healthcare was in Spain.
Oh, okay. My experience with healthcare, I've always had private healthcare insurance. It is really affordable here. And depending on which comunidad you live in, so which state you live in Spain, and your visa class, that dictates whether you also have access to the public healthcare system. During the pandemic, everybody had access to the public healthcare system because they didn't want everybody to die, which was nice. So, getting like your vaccine and stuff like that, that was something that you just got to do. And in Spain, there's community health centers. Like every barrio has its own health center, maybe multiple. So it's really, really easy, and it's often attached to your empadronamiento, which is when you move to a city, you need to get registered. So it's connected to like where you live and stuff like that. But the healthcare, I think, is really great. Um, Private, I think, is probably better just because depending on which city you live in, you get seen faster and there's more opportunity to have a practitioner that speaks English if that's really important to you. You may not want to do like my very first, I don't know if it was my first, it might have been my first doctor's appointment, which was a gynecologist appointment in La Rioja. I picked it because it was the closest one to my house. It ended up being like the top fertility doctor in northern Spain, the entire country. So I walk in and it's like baby pictures everywhere, and I was like, what? And that I had to do that all in Spanish when I first went to Spain. And just a quick aside, I was up in the stirrups just with everything open, and I remember the nurse practitioner being like, "Where are you from?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm from Atlanta." And she's like, "Oh, you speak English?" I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Can you tutor my son in English?" And I was like, like, what are you gonna do? Like, everything is open and exposed. You gotta say no. And she's like, "Well, just think about it." And she went into the office, wrote her name and number on a sticky note, and stuck it to my little gown off the stirrups. So
Yeah.
that happened. But normally, like all my other experiences have been lovely. I mean, if anything, I feel like it's more like holistic and more encompassing. I've had types of tests done that I don't know if I would have ever had done in the United States unless something was like wrong with you. Like
Yeah.
they're very thorough, and it's a culture that is not really heavy-handed with the pharmaceuticals. They really want you to like,
Yeah.
sleep it off or take this, and it's like valerian or something like that. So it's been a good experience, I would say.
Okay, good.
I
So,
would like to add on
Christine,
to that really. Oh,
and I'm not
good.
gonna
Sorry.
hold you ladies too long. I'm sorry. No, we went over. So, or do you got a hard stop? Are we good? Got some more questions? You okay?
I'm good.
Okay. So, Christine, lots of people go to Barcelona. Do you have other cities, mid to big city, you like? Would you buy in Spain?
Okay, so I've lived in Logroño, which is the capital of the smallest state in Spain. I live in Barcelona, which, everybody loves Barcelona. And I live in Valencia. Valencia is the third largest city in Spain. I think when it comes to cities in Spain, of where you want to live, you gotta really decide what type of person you are. Because Spain is actually really geographically diverse. Like if you move to the northwest part, it's in Galicia, it's like being in Ireland. Like it's foggy and very rainy and green. I think most people think of Sevilla and Andalusia. When they think of Spain, they think of like, oh, flamenco. And you're like, that is a very specific city and like region. Like that's not the entirety of Spain. Um, or here on the Mediterranean, there's so many different cities. So I think other cities to think about, maybe Bilbao. You need to probably learn some euskera if you ever want to make local friends. Like you need to learn Basque. It's a Basque country. That could be cool. It's a cosmopolitan place. I've heard good things about Zaragoza as well. Um, where else would I? I don't know.
Uh oh, we lost Christine. Uh oh. So we.
I think
Oh,
I want to kind of piggyback off what she was
there she go.
saying.
She's back.
There you go. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
Yeah.
you. We can. Look, you look scared. It's okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. Wait, no,
No,
I
it's
somehow
okay.
connected to my Bluetooth. I'm sorry. Okay,
You
sorry.
got another question, Christine? Do you see yourself leaving Spain for another country?
Um, maybe, yeah. I'd never say never. This is what I've learned from living abroad and being abroad for 6 years. I honestly feel the combination of my lived experience here and maybe just who I am, I could live anywhere. Like I really thought about that. I was like, I could be dropped into New Zealand, and I would be like, yeah, you gotta learn, you gotta go through immigration, you gotta do everything else, but like, it's definitely possible. So yeah, I could.
And
It would have to be a good hook for sure.
Isla wants to know, what visa do you have?
What visa do I have here in Spain? I have permanent residence,
Okay.
so
Okay,
always.
so Isla's asking about dating. Ladies, what is the dating like for you guys? So, Isla, if you missed the beginning, my dating initially was trash. I mean, I met a guy, I had a good time for a little bit, and now I'm done with that. Ladies, you all can speak to the rest of your dating situations.
I'll just say this. If you listen to my podcast, Flirts from Foreign, who I actually have both these ladies, they have their own episodes on the podcast, so definitely listen to their individual podcast episodes. I also have two compilations, Dating Abroad Part 1, Dating Abroad Part 2, and then I also this summer put some live discussions I did last year on the podcast that actually, I mean, it runs the gamut of experiences. People found their love of the life, people got married, people had a romance scammer. Um, it it's everything. But I'll say personally, it has made me very particular about what I'm looking for. I think it's really important to understand your values and understand like your I wouldn't say like your hard line things, but like you have to understand where you are. Like if you're moving someplace because you're like, oh, it's cheaper and things like that, you have to think about the economics of that. Are you going to meet somebody that is making the type of money you think you need and things like that? That's a big one. I say that and people don't want to hear it, makes them uncomfortable, but that oftentimes becomes an issue. So there's so many things about dating. But I'll let you, Candace, to take it over, take it away, Candace.
Well, it's kind of funny because I actually wrote a book called The Black Girl's Guide to Living, Loving, and Traveling Abroad back in, was it 2021? And so I kind of share my dating experience, and it was also inspired by this woman who came to marry someone that they met on the internet sight unseen. And I was like, oh my God, I can't have, my sisters out here in these international streets looking crazy. So let me like put together a book real quick to help people out. But I think overall my dating experience has been relatively positive, a positive experience, mostly in terms of one, feeling desired, Two, meeting men that are educated, on what I consider on my level. I hate to kind of say that, but I can't think of a better word right now. But just in this, on the same path as me, professionals, great conversations, loving to do, intellectual type men, not making me feel guilty for being an educated woman or any of those things. Um, and so I say those things have been extremely positive. You do have to be very clear about your values and what it is that you want, because as a foreign woman, you are going to get a lot of attention. And if you're not used to that, it can kind of take you aback, and you can kind of get caught up in all of that. Like I said earlier, you get these men give you a lot of romance that you don't get in the States. Like, you're getting the full on romance. Everything that you wish men would do probably back home in the States, these men do over here. They're picking you up in the nice cars with the bouquet of flowers and taking you out to eat. I even had one gentleman shut down an entire restaurant just for he and I. And I walked in, I'm like, where are all the other patrons? He's like, oh no. He's like, I know the owner. This is for a private evening. I was like, oh my God. Oh, this is so wonderful. But you have to really, after you kind of get over all of that, you have to be, especially if you're looking something for something a bit more intentional and serious, you have to understand what your value set is. If you know that you're a traditional woman, then I suggest maybe going to a more traditional culture, because if you go places like, I know Spain, probably Portugal is a little bit more liberal. Italians are traditional in some sense, but they don't necessarily marry. They're more into cohabitation. So if you know that living together for years on end is not your vibe, then you're going to want to move to likely to a culture where um, men get married and have more social pressure to get married. So, and then you have to consider things like family dynamics too, because when you actually get involved in a culture that's very family oriented, I don't think most Americans understand what that means. To actually be immersed into a culture that is actually family oriented, and people actually expect for you to show up like family, and people and if you don't, they get mad at you. And when you're trying to be all American and like, these are my boundaries and these are my schedule and they're like, we're a family, so stop the American foolishness. Like, what? Who cares about your boundaries? We're family. So, but I have to say, overall, it's been positive. I was engaged last year. That ended up, I ended up calling off the engagement just because, I saw some things as we got further along that I knew long term wasn't going to work out, especially if there was going to be no communication about that. And that is another thing, too, communication. People in different cultures communicate about certain things in relationships in a different way, or not at all. In some cultures that are very passive aggressive, they don't talk about anything and then they just blow up. And I mean, like, they go from 0 to 100 and you're just like, whoa, what happened? So, those are just some things that you have to understand, the cultural differences. But again, I say overall, it's been a positive experience. And I wish probably if I had have gone earlier, um, I think I would, and learned what I learned know now at an earlier age, I would have probably already been married and had that the whole package a long time ago. That's what I
Well,
think.
I learned something just listening to you. Like, oh, okay, yes. Team, I don't know if this is Team Mister or Team R. Asks if we are self-employed. We are. Candice, not ask, did you have any obstacles from moving family with your daughter? Did you have any
Did I
obstacles?
have any obstacles from family moving with my? No, like I said, I didn't really have a really close relationship with most of my family. My mother was always super supportive, and she was down to like travel wherever we were. So she would fly in to some, even sometimes she would fly in to stay with us for a few months. She might come take my daughter back for like a month and bring her back, and we meet someplace in the world to reconnect. So I was lucky. I never had a problem with that.
Atlantis says, have I given up on dating? I have. I have a boyfriend. It's been 2 years now. We are together. So, and he cooks me good food. So I ain't going nowhere. I ain't gonna go
Wonderful.
nowhere. It doesn't take much. Maybe just feed me. When I lived in Europe, the models always warned me that Italian men always had black mistresses, but German men will marry their black girlfriends. I
Oh,
don't. Okay.
I think, I mean, for me, I think that Italian men will marry. You have to understand this about Italian men. Italian men like women, period. End of the discussion. They like women. And they will marry. Plenty of black women I know in Italy are married or in long-term loving relationships, and they're not mistresses. They are the main girl. Now, if something else is going on in the background, I don't know about that. But yeah, I think you just have to have your standards up front. I don't think that's necessarily true.
Yeah. Okay. So we just got a couple more questions. Just two more. One is what is that? What to do before? Okay. What are some things that you would recommend before moving abroad?
Okay. I would recommend just really kind of understanding what it is that you want and what you're looking for, and then maybe finding countries that match those things. So you'll have this a much easier transition.
That's a great answer. What about you, Christine? What would you say?
yeah, I think it's vital that you set a really strong intention and you have a really clear vision of what a life well lived means to you. And those all things sound really woo woo, and they're not. I mean, like, really write down, why are you moving abroad? What is it that you're trying to experience and to accomplish? What is a vision of a life well lived?
Mhm.
Um, I have a guide. It's called Moving Abroad with Intention, and it breaks down various aspects of your life: financial, emotional, professional, physical. And it really helps you deep dive into what's working in my life currently before I go abroad, what's not working. And
Mhm.
are these internal factors, meaning is this all me, or is this external factors, environmental? Which I think might help people, one, get clear about they're like no goes. The things that are not working for you and they're external, do not settle in a city or a place, even though you love it, like you love Paris, but like, no, like, don't move there. And the things that are no goes or things that are not working for you that are internal, see a therapist or figure out, understand that you're taking that baggage with you, and that
Yes.
moving abroad, changing geographic location isn't going to absolve that. And like, the people of Colombia or Portugal aren't going to like magically make you better. So I think taking some deep time to figure out what does financial wellness mean to me, defining it, writing it down. Why am I living financially well now, or why am I not living financially well? How's living abroad going to make me financially well? Writing those
Mhm.
things down. That gives you a clear guideline of like, this is what I actually want. This is how I'm defining it, so that when you are trying to look for a place, you have something written down to refer back to. Not just emotions, not just vibes, not just IG posts and things like that. Like, what works for you, because it's your life. People can have a wonderful time in Paris, but you're having a shit time. That's because it's your life and you're not, you got to tend to it. You got to be an active participant in it. So that's the biggest thing you need to do before you move abroad, is really understand why you're moving abroad, what is it that you want, and who are you? And be real. Like, don't have the man in the mirror moment abroad, because that will shake you up. No, have that moment before you go abroad, so that at least when you go through things, you're like, "Yep, that's me. I knew that was me." Because that's not something you want to have. Is like, you're down, you're out, and then you're also coming to grips with who you are. Like, that's a lot to do, and then in a foreign country in a different language. That's a lot.
Amen. Amen. Well, ladies, I appreciate you so much. How do you get in touch with these ladies? Because they're dynamic, they're transparent, they're intelligent. Please look out for anything that they're doing. Christine, you can find her podcast, Flourish in the Foreign. Link is in the description of this video. Candice, herexpatlife.com. Please check her out. Her link is in the description as well. Reach out to the ladies. Their Instagrams are at the bottom of their names. Please check them out, follow them, follow the journey, ask questions, but be intentional and be nice, okay? As always, I enjoy talking to you all. And Christine, we have known each other. I guess we kind of moved around the same time, and you've always been such a light. So appreciate that camaraderie. And Candice, just now meeting you, Christine did the introduction, so I appreciate that. I appreciate talking to ladies, and you guys got it together, and I just love it. So this was a great discussion. Thank you so much for being here.
You are so welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right, folks, you know the deal. So we'll do something live next week. We go live for a couple things. I think I'm talking definitely business on Tuesdays, every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time during your lunch break. Come check me out, because we're talking about if you want to make some online income and get your stuff together, you need to get your marketing message and all that together. So Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time next week. And then we'll be talking about Madeira, a trip I went to in Portugal, and I'll share that with you. So until next time, ladies, ciao, ciao.
All right, ciao.